Welcome to our not mitzvah of the week, our brief hiatus from the mitzvah, to think about the role of dreams in our own life and in Yosef's life to some degree. Let me share my screen here. And I did not bring this whole essay, but I did think that this quote from Rabbi Sachs was particularly beautiful. I will admit I don't remember if it's on, there are so many dream Parshiot with Yosef, if it's on this week's Parsha or one of the others. But what Rabbi Sachs says, right, he gives sort of he articulates these three gifts of leadership. To dream dreams, to understand and articulate the dreams of others, and to find ways of turning a dream into a reality. These three gifts are leadership the Joseph way, right? So dreaming dreams was in previous parshiot, right, where Yosef dreams his dreams that about the stars and the moon and the sun and the sheaves of wheat. This week's parsha is understanding and articulating the dreams of others, right? And the tail end of last week's parsha, right? Yosef interprets the dreams of the what is it, the winemaker and the bread maker, the baker. Um, and then in this week's parsha, we won't look at it inside, but we'll see, right, that Paro dreams dreams, and then ways of turning the dream into the reality, right? That's that beautiful way that Yosef manages to guide Paro to creating storehouses in a way that creates a opportunity for those who have famine to come visit Egypt to get food. Um, and that I think that the idea that the leadership is all of those things, right? It's dreaming your own dreams. It's also understanding other people's dreams. And then it's not just leaving them in your sleeping phase, but bringing them into reality in some way or another. So I did put this pasuk just as our jumping off point here. V'yihi miketz shnatayim yamim ufaro cholem v'hinei omed al hayaor. So after 2 years' time, right, Yosef has been stuck in jail. Paro dreams that he was standing by the Nile, right? And his dream is of the 7 fat cows and the 7 skinny cows, and he dreams again. And then Yosef interprets the dreams. But I would like us just to think about dreams sort of more broadly for ourselves. I what I think is interesting is that most of the time when we talk about dreams in the Torah, when Avimelech has a dream, when Paro has dreams, when Yaakov has a dream, there's sort of the contextual clues that we've gone to sleep, right? Either like Yaakov lies down and it's dark out and puts a rock under his head. We'll see that Paro wakes up from his dream. What's interesting about Yosef's dreams is all of those contextual clues are missing. So I would argue that I think Yosef's dreams are like the way that Martin Luther King says, I've dreamed a dream, right? It's about that dream for turning dreams into reality. It's not necessarily about like lying your head on the pillow. But in the context of this week's Parsha, Paro certainly seems to be asleep during his dreams. And so I brought us a few sources about what happens when we dream. I think that the Derech Hashem, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, is particularly beautiful. He says, when we sleep, most of what happens is that our bodies rest and our brains are given the chance to sort out the thoughts of our day. Right? That's, I think, how we think about dreams, right? Is that often it's like the way that our brain digests what's happened throughout the day. However, something else occurs at that same time. The higher parts of our soul become slightly detached from our body, right? And then he says parenthetically, right? This is why we say moda'ani, because when we are thanking Hashem for returning our soul, right? Shehachazarta bi nishmati. It's not like that our neshama went floating around, but that our neshama was drawn to somewhere else, right? And it's like almost like a dreamscape, like a fantasia, right? Once our souls depart our bodies, they are able to roam the spiritual planes of existence where they are most at home, right? Our body anchors our neshama here on earth, but our neshama is actually much more comfortable, says Rabbi Luzzatto, out in the sort of mystical planes. While there, they may interact with other spiritual entities, such as angels. They may hear or overhear some of what the future holds in store for man. The message may be an actual prophecy or simply an omen, depending upon the level of being which communicates with the soul. That information may in turn trickle down into our consciousness and work their way into our dreams. So I think this idea of our neshamot or interacting with or overhearing the angels really calls us to Yaakov's dream, right? Where Yaakov dreams about the angels going up and down the ladder. It's almost as if like maybe his soul was able to really go to the ladder where his body was stuck, on earth. Mm. But I think, right, from Rabbi Luzato's commentary, we should give our dreams a lot of weight. Um, it might be an actual prophecy, right? We'll see how much of a prophecy we sort of consider it. Um, and it's unclear how much our soul communicates with our brain or our consciousness. But certainly the dream is like the communication between our neshama that has some otherworldly experience and our body. I don't know how many of you remember your dreams or think about your dreams the next day, but certainly Rabbi Luzzatto, I think, would say to give it a lot of weight. And the rabbis in Masechet Brachot, tell us this is an old source sheet. There's no punctuation yet on the side. Says that there are five things, things that are echad mishishim, that are 1/60th. Eluhain, Eish, Devash, Shabbat, Shina, v'Chalom. Okay, so what are these things a 60th of? Eish echad mishishim legehenim. Right, when we see a fire, it's 1/60th of the fire of Gehenna, right? Whatever that means to us. Dvash echad mishishim laman, which I think is such a beautiful one. That honey is 1/60th of man. Like if we're trying to imagine the experience of the Jews in the desert eating the man, that you can imagine honey is like just a tiny, tiny taste of what that must have tasted like to them. Shabbat echad mishishim le'olam haba, right? Just like fire is 1/60th of Gehenna, Shabbat is 1/60th of the world to come. Sheina echad mishishim le'mita, sleep is 1/60th of death. So although it is restorative and we need it, it also is like almost like a death-like state. V'chalom echad mishishim le'nevuah. It's 1/60th of a prophecy, right? So Rabbi Luzzatto, picking up perhaps on this Gemara, is saying, fine, it's not like a full prophecy because it's not totally clear. We're not in control of our dreams. We can't totally understand them. But there is certainly a prophetic note to them. And some people certainly take their dreams much more seriously, or have sort of a stronger connection, right? Think like sort of in joke, like Fiddler on the Roof, right? That's not a real dream. It's obviously just her way of getting out of, I forget what it is she wants to do, name her child, or who her daughter gets married to, right? And her great aunt comes from beyond the grave to convince her. But some people really do have dreams where they say, "Oh, I saw this was going to happen, and then it happened," or it's like always a little hard how much that inspires them to make the thing happen. But certainly when we sleep, it seems as though we have some kind of even loosely tethered connection to Hashem, which is very powerful, not to be taken lightly. Okay, how are we meant to understand dreams, right? So this is about dreaming the dream, right? What does Rabbi Sachs say? Dream dreams, right? So dream the dream, connect to Hashem. Now we have to be able to articulate and understand dreams. I think this is a beautiful idea that Rav Chisda says. Rav Chisda says, "Chelma de la mefasher ki igarta de la mikraya." A dream not interpreted as like an unread letter. That like you're holding the letter in your hand, but until you open it, you don't know what it says inside. And so I feel like Rav Chisda is saying like you leave a lot on the table. Don't just forget your dream when you wake up. Think about it, like sit on it, try to understand what it might be helping guide you to do. This tefillah is one of my absolute favorites. There's not always time to read it in shul, and I actually wish that it belonged like in some other location in our davening, because this is like, right, this is a tefillah that you could say during Birkat Kohanim. So it's the end of davening. Everyone's like a little kvetchy and antsy to get home. There is a beautiful sort of tune that the Kohanim chant when you could read this, but you'd have to be a little fast. But and I don't know why, I don't know the origin of it, why it is put at this spot in the davening. But I think it's so beautiful. Ribono shel olam, ani shalach v'chalamotai shalach. Right? I am yours and my dreams are yours, right? That connection to Hashem. Chalom chalamti v'eni yodea mahu, right? This is my unread letter. I don't know what I dreamt in my dream. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Hashem Elokai v'Elokei avotai. Like, please, God, may it be your will. Sheyu kol chalamotai alai v'al kol Yisrael latova. Right? May all of my dreams be for the good of me and for all of Yisrael. Bein shechalamti al atmi uvein shechalamti al acherim. Uvein shechalmu acherim alai. Right? Whether I dreamed them for myself, whether I dreamed them about other people, whether other people dreamed about me, right? This interpretation, this sort of interaction between us and our dreams. Im tovim הם חזקים בעצמם ויתקיימו בי ובהם כחלומותיו של יוסף הצדיק. Right, referencing our Parsha and the Parsha immediately prior. If the dreams are good, please strengthen them and reinforce them like the dreams of Yosef. If, where did I go? V'im tzrichim refuah, rafa'im kechuzkiyahu melech Yehuda mechalyo u'Miriam ha'neviah mitzarata. וכנעמה מצרתו, וכמי מראה על ידי משה רבינו, וכמי יריחו על ידי אלישע, וכשם שהפכת קהילת בלעם הרשע מקללה לברכה, כן תהפוך כל חלומותי עליי ועל כל ישראל לטובה, ותשמרני ותחייני ותרצני, אמן. Right, so if they're good, strengthen them like Yosef, and if they're not good, if they require some kind of healing, if your dream, right, you might say like feels toxic or makes you anxious, right? If you wake up feeling sort of uneasy. I don't know, you've probably all, I've certainly had this experience of like waking up feeling like you fell off the cliff, right? Like where your like leg jumps or you wake up gasping, right? Then who do we look to as our models? Are like Miriam, like Chezkiah, like the bitter waters of Mara with Moshe and Yericho with Elisha. And just as you transform the curse of Bala, please transform my dreams. And I think, right, in Israel, they say Birkat Kohanim a lot. Here in America, in the diaspora, we only say it periodically through the year, and we say it at big chagim. And I think that's probably notable. Like our dreams might be more poignant at that time of year. If you were doing Aliyat HaRegel, right, if this is sort of in place of that experience, maybe it's like a time where we're closer to Hashem. There's sort of big moments in the year, right? Sukkot and Shavuot and Pesach. And so maybe our dreams like take on just more weight at that time of year. I don't know if maybe it's about timing that we put it in Birkat Kohanim, but I think it's a beautiful reminder that our dreams can be powerful and that we have to figure them out. Are they good? Are they bad? Do they need strengthening? Do they need healing? Right? So that's dreaming the dream and then interpreting the dream. And then this idea about turning dreams into reality. And again, we look to Yosef, right? The rabbis of the Gemara are struggling to sort of figure out dreams, and there's so many amazing quotes about dreams throughout the Masechet. But here, Rabbi Levi says, "The olam yitzapeh adam lechalom tov ad esrim ushtayim shana," that a man should await the fulfillment of a good dream for as much as 22 years. Minalan, where do we know this from? Like, why should we wait so long? Mi Yosef. We should know it from Yosef because it says, Ela toldot Yaakov Yosef ben shva esrei shana v'chule. And then, right, so at the beginning it says that Yosef was 17 years old. And then how old was he when he finally stood before Paro? Yosef ben shloshim shana ba'amdo lifnei Paro. That is in this week's Parsha. And so the difference, right, min shavisrei ad tlatin kama have tlatzare, right? The rabbi says, how many years is it from 17 to 30? 13. Ushav shiva v'tarte tekafna ha esrim u'shtayim, and the 7 years of plenty and the 2 of famine, and you get to 22, right? So Yosef has the dream when he's 17, but then he has to be 39 by the time the dream comes true and the brothers bow down, right? Because 30, he gets to 30 and then he has the 7 plus 2. And so therefore, if Yosef had to wait 22 years for his dream to come true, we also must be patient. Although, sometimes it's harder to be patient than others. Right, Theodore Herzl famously says, "In tirtzu ein zo agada," right? If we will it, it is no dream. It's not just a dream in our heads. It's like actually becomes a reality. Harriet Tubman, not a Parshan, but such a beautiful dreamer herself, she wrote, "Every great dream begins with a dreamer. And always remember, you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world." Right? That the
Could
dream,
I could I just say
please.
some, uh, about Theodore Herzl?
Hmm.
It seems to me that he fulfilled the description that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs gave of
Hmm.
of a leader,
Oh,
because
I love that.
he dreamed this dream. It happened to be the dream that the Jewish people had had for
Hmm.
thousands of years. But he took that dream and worked with it in order to make it come true. He enlisted others. He was instrumental in calling the first Zionist Congress in Basel.
Hmm.
And he wrote in
Hmm.
his diary that day, "Today I created the Jewish state." And he
Hmm.
spent the rest of his life working toward that dream by and trying to enlist the aid of world leaders of many nations. It's
Hmm.
sad that he didn't live to see his dream come true,
Yes.
but he certainly seems to have fulfilled the criteria that Jonathan Sachs mentioned.
Hmm. I love that. He was a dreamer. He articulated other people's dreams and he helped turn them into reality.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Actually, his dream was fulfilled within 49 years. And he
Hmm.
said, and he says in that famous statement, in 50 years, it'll be seen that I was right.
Hmm.
And it ended up from the time of the first Zionist Congress until 1948 was actually 49 years. So even a year ahead of what he expected.
Just under the wire. And more than 22, but not less. Um, Beautiful. I love that. And I think it's interesting to think about, right, who are the powerful leaders, not just the ones who have their own dreams, but as you're saying, Tamar, who inspire and rally other people and their dreams to be united with yours to get things done. Right. I think and I think that in a large part that is Yosef's big mistake at the very beginning, right? Is not being able to incorporate his brother's dreams um, into his plan, not even inquiring about his brother's dreams, right? Is part of what I think makes him so unsuccessful with his brothers. And it's not until he realizes that he has to work with Paro's dream to get what he wants that he's able to think sort of outside of himself in that way.
What dreams did his brother have that you're speaking?
No, it's a fair question, right? I think the real problem is he didn't even ask, right? He said, "I have this dream and it's so great," and that's the end of the story. And it's of course it's impossible to know, but like, what if Yosef had said, "And you, Ruvain, do you have a dream? Right? What's your dream? What did you sleep on last night?" Right? And
We
maybe
should,
Ruvain would have said something that would have actually been a fine thing to work with within Yosef's paradigm.
we should mention Martin Luther King, who said, "I have a dream."
Yeah, I love that because I think it helps articulate Yosef, right? Yosef, it does not say went to sleep or woke up. And so I think that you can imagine Yosef like Martin Luther King, right? I dreamed a dream, sort of the way that Theodore Herzl is using it, right? Not I went to sleep and I had a REM cycle, a REM cycle, right? But I dreamed a dream. I will this thing that will not just be a dream. I think Martin Luther King is a great example also of someone who had a dream and then inspired people's dreams, inspired people to articulate, to understand, to interpret their dreams. Um, so this was a dream chavruta, right? We don't have to answer these questions now, but the question of do you have recurring dreams? Do they like seem significant? Are there parts of your dreams that really stick with you? sometimes like I'll be doing something and seeing an image or hearing a song, I'll think like, oh, I remember a dream, that hadn't really risen to the surface in the morning. Um, some people, journal their dreams every morning. They like really try to remember them and they train themselves to remember them. And if you think about them as like sort of an echo of some conversation your neshama had with an angel, it like does seem maybe worth it to check it out, try to remember it.
Yasher kochech. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to pull this up just to say the question of recurring dreams is an interesting one. If you have ever been sort of bored and paging through the back of your Art Scroll Siddur, you might have seen the Hatavat Chalom, the amelioration of a dream. There are instructions, as it says, and the liturgy that you have to have like a Beit Din in front of you of three people. Um, and it's sort of if you've had a disturbing dream or if you've had a recurring dream. So I don't know anyone who has done this, has convened. Maybe Rabbi Eliakim knows someone. It's not a common. I don't think it's a common
I
thing that
see it
people
done.
do.
I think I was in Kiryat Sanz in Netanya one time, and there was an old Jew. Somebody was making fun. He does this all the time, and he set up a Beis Din, and they said the whole long thing over there and all that. That's the only time I saw it.
It's really interesting. Here's the text. It starts also with a Ribono Shel Olam, right? But unlike um this part is right is the Birkat Kohanim that I brought us, right? The text of the basic text. But then there is this whole section, hold on, let's see if we can find it, about, like if it was a bad dream, like trying to sort of like nullify it, thinking that if it is sort of part prophecy, we want to like get it out of the way if it's not a good dream. There are some people who fast after having a bad dream because this optional fast is said to neutralize any negative effects of the dream. And the Shulchan Aruch even says you could do it on Shabbos, which like we almost never fast on Shabbat, right? Yom Kippur is pretty much the only time. Um, Now, I am not a big faster, so I certainly am not advocating for anyone fasting, but I think it shows the unusual weight the rabbis gave to dreams, not just in the Gemara or in like nice davening in Birkat Kohanim, but actually to say like this is serious, right? This is actually maybe 160th nevuah, and if you get a bad nevuah, like you should take some action. We no longer fast on Shabbat, even because of disturbing dreams. But what I think is interesting, right, is that he says this is because we no longer know how to interpret them. We don't really know, right? It's an unread letter, as the Gemara would have said. And so we don't need to fast if we're not really sure we understand how to interpret dreams. And I think of it as like a lost art, right? Often we read about older times where the rabbis, I think that he even finishes the story with a story about the rabbi, right? Where some like people sort of, it was an art. People were able to interpret dreams. It wasn't like a fortune teller with a ball, right? It was listening to the person's inner monologue, whether that was just the way that they sort of processed the things of their day or the angelic conversations they overheard. Um, and then he brings us here. The Chazon Ish says, many times I had dreams, but I paid no attention to them. Right? So not everyone gave them such weight. Um, because most dreams, right, sort of reflect what happened to you during the day. And this is such a terrible, sad sentence. In an era where people are so involved in worldly affairs, along with the nonstop media sensationalism of news stories, it is simply natural for one to dream all sorts of disturbing and apocalyptic thoughts at night. Also, eating before bed is known to trigger dreams. I don't know if that's actually true. And so you might, we go to bed much fuller than our ancestors used to. And they didn't have the sensationalist news stories to keep us up at night. Um, And so, as such, the OU advises that we not pay too much attention to dreams because most of our dreams don't come true. Most of them aren't even recorded. Um, right? Dreams are primarily nonsense. Rav Kook teaches that a bad dream is a sign that one has allowed his mind to internalize something harmful, which is interesting, right? Maybe it's just a sign that we shouldn't take things so um, strongly. The Abarbanel commenting on our Parsha in Miketz says that dreams are comparable to prophecy, similar to sort of the Gemara about the 1/60th of Nevuah, or an undeveloped prophecy, right? Sort of like that unread letter. Even the rational Rambam treats dreams in a manner that is similar to the way he relates to prophecy, right? So there is sort of this feeling that we can't write off dreams too early. Um, and the following anecdote, I just wanted to follow this last story, offers some guidance on how we should approach the subject of dreams. A woman once asked Rabbi Eliezer to interpret her dreams in which the ceiling of her house caved in. Right, so the woman dreamed that her house, the ceiling caved in. Rabbi Eliezer told her this was a sign that she would give birth to a boy. It's like kind of a random interpretation, and so it was. It actually happened. Sometime later, the woman had the identical dream and returned to seek Rabbi Eliezer's interpretation. Rabbi Eliezer, however, could not be found, and his students interpreted her dream for her. They told her that the dream predicted that her husband will die, and so it was. When Rabbi Eliezer heard what occurred, he scolded his students, saying, "You caused the death of her husband, for the outcome of the dream depends on its interpretation." Right? Which seems to say, like, Rabbi Eliezer chose to make her dream be about having a baby. Honestly, the caving in roof, I think, sounds more like your husband dying than having a baby. Right? It doesn't sound like a good dream. But yet, Rabbi Eliezer seemed to feel like the interpreter of the dream had really great power when it came to interpreting dreams. And when we think about Yosef, right, Yosef was presented with this opportunity. Who knows what Paro's dream really was or what it was about? Maybe Paro had a big hamburger before he went to bed and thought about cows. Probably not. I don't think they ate hamburger. Thank you, Sherry, for laughing at my joke. But but I think that the idea that Yosef, like Rabbi Eliezer, saw the opportunity to create the reality based on the interpretation, managed to make this dream about cows into a very powerful and helpful story um, about how to create food resources in times of scarcity. So with that, I will stop the share. I will also, let me just, I will stop the share first, and then I'll put the source sheet in the chat. So if I apologize that it did not go out earlier, it was, as I said, it was kind of a hectic day, and so it was down to the wire finishing it up. But here it is, in case anyone wanted that link or anything else in the source sheet. And I would welcome people's thoughts, or if you want to share a dream you had or anything of the sort.
Mechila Bodech, 2 or 3 really quick things. Number one, that Ribbonu Shalom that we say in Birkat Kohanim.
Yeah.
I don't know where I've seen it or heard, is that Birkat Kohanim has that power to make dreams that were into something positive, being mamtik, the dreams, sweetening them. Personally, very often, if I'm in Shul on a Yontav, when they are not, and then you don't have time to say the whole thing, I'll say it if I remember when I got home later.
Nice.
Too. Final, and then also the I think it's based on our Chaim Kadosh, and in Parsha Shmini, etc., and Shir Maos B'Shuv Hashem, that probably the reason that Ashkenazim do not have Birchat Kohanim during the year is because you need to have total simcha. Yontav is dry. And then why in Eretz Israel and Israel do we have it? Because living in Israel is considered by definition dry. And finally, once we sat down to Rosh Hashanah lunch after coming home from Shul, and my father, out of character for himself, suddenly remembers that he had a dream the night before of a piece of Gemara that he learned when he was a kid. And my brother and I, the lighter side of things, yelled out, "Who do you think you are, Martin Luther King?"
That's good. I like that.
Oh, I remember Freud, who's the big name in medicine about dreams. I don't know exactly how to insert this in the context of the way you said. He said that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. If you want to understand the unconscious, you have to interpret the dream, which is, again, interpretation is important, not for looking for God, but looking for you could say, the inner God within yourself. The unconscious is something that's there.
Hmm.
Conscious God, maybe.
That's cool. I like that.
And all Jews are chelek Elokam Imal. All Jews have a piece of Hashem.
I like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, may we all dream dreams of light and peace and good health and happy Hanukkahs all around.
Happy Hanukkah.
And may those dreams come true and be interpreted and no longer live just in the world of dreams. Next week, I anticipate we'll get back onto the mitzvah of the week. It looked like an interesting jump. I'm curious to look more closely at it, but if not, maybe we'll do a different mitzvah. And we are close to closing out Sefer Breshit, which is our mitzvah light set of Parshiot. And so I think it will be interesting to jump into Shmot, where we start to already begin to grapple with more of the mitzvot that we hold today. So I hope everyone has a Chag Urim Sameach and stays warm and cozy. It's supposed to get a little warmer here. Hopefully it'll be warmer near you too. And an early Shabbat Shalom. And I'll see you next week.
Happy Hanukkah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy Hanukkah. Bye, guys.